A scientist should be a Marvel character. Though it often takes time, out of crisis comes action. Also out of crisis comes a renewed appreciation for small pleasures that give life a meaning. Scientific researchers find joy in the search for scientific answers. Here's how they describe what motivates them their work. They say, it's just like solving puzzles.
The big players, calorically speaking, are fats and sugars. And the reason we desire them is because they activate our neural reward system, flooding those brain regions with the neurotransmitter dopamine. But studies show that fats and sugars trigger those rewarding bursts of dopamine in different ways.
Many people assume that male songbirds are the ones doing the crooning. But more than 660 species of songbirds are known in which the females sing as well. And there are still 3,500 species of songbird in which the female singing status is unknown. Which implies that there could be plenty more female singers to be found.
Too much work not only causes mental stress, it hurts our physical health too. According to one study that looked at 43 years of data on homemakers, those who took fewer vacations were twice as likely to die of heart attacks. Another study that looked at British civil servants found that those who worked more hours were twice as likely to suffer from depression.
Breaking the 4-minute mile is to this day an extreme accomplishment, but hundreds have done it, including a handful of high school students. Even stranger, Larry, the man who previously said he could not do it, ended up breaking the 4-minute barrier just 46 days after Bannister. All he needed was a little extra belief, which Bannister's feat provided.
I was born to a German-speaking mother and an American father. I was born to a German-speaking mother and an American father.
The university accommodation is expensive, so I chose to live off campus. The university accommodation is expensive, so I chose to live off campus.
In the end, it's what people like to eat that's important. In the end, it's what people like to eat that's important.
The perfect time to get married is between the late 20s and the mid-30s. The perfect time to get married is between the late 20s and the mid-30s.
To end, I want to tell you how I hit the worst bump in the road yet. To end, I want to tell you how I hit the worst bump in the road yet. From a very young age, my parents wanted me to have a wider view of the world. From a very young age, my parents wanted me to have a wider view of the world.
They exchanged rings and promised to be loyal to each other. They exchanged rings and promised to be loyal to each other. Older people are more mature. They are more financially secure. Older people are more mature. They are more financially secure.
This image represents the relationship between energy and human life. The chemical energy for human metabolism is provided by means of carbohydrates, fats and other sources. The chemical energy is converted to ATP, which is the body's energy currency. After metabolism, body leaves chemical waste in the form of carbon dioxide, water and heat. In conclusion, food provides us energy for our daily activities and survival.
This image represents a process for making fish feed using extrusion. Firstly, dry and wet feed ingredients are fed to the mixer. The dry ingredients need to be ground in a grinder. Secondly, a preconditioner uses heat or steam to mix the ingredients. Thirdly, the extruder uses heat and pressure to make fish feed. The fish feed is then dried, cooled and weighing is done. Lastly, it is packed and labeled into plastic bags for shipping. In conclusion, the 6-stage process seems to be very lucrative.
This line graph represents the trends of vegetables and fruits consumption in the United States. The data between years 1970 and 2010 shows that the vegetables were more popular than fruits for the entire period. However, consumption of vegetables increased sharply from year 1980. On the other hand, trend in fruit consumption was mostly steady. In conclusion, there was a decline in consumption of both veggies and fruits in year 2010, probably because increase in the popularity of meat consumption.
We appear to take it as a rule, or as a law of nature, that each species is adapted to the climate of its own home. For example, species from the Arctic, or even a temperate region, could not survive in a tropical climate, nor could a tropical species last long if it found itself at the South Pole. But it is true to say there's too much emphasis placed on the degree of adaptation of species to the climates where they live. We assume that this adaptation, if all species are descended from a single form, must have taken place over millions of years. Yet a large number of plants and animals brought from different countries remain perfectly healthy in their new home. Also, there are several examples of animal species that have extended their range within historical times, from warmer to cooler latitudes, and the other way round. Rats and mice provide good examples. They have been transported by man to many parts of the world, and now have a far wider range than any other rodent, and they can be found living in the cold climate of the Faroe Islands to the north, through the tropical zones to the Falklands in the south. It is possible to see adaptation to any climate as a quality that is part of an inborn flexibility of the physical and mental constitution of most animals. Therefore, the ability to survive in the most different climates by both man and his domestic animals, and the fact that elephants once existed in an ice age while living species live in tropical areas, should not be seen as deviations from the rule, but as examples of this flexibility being brought into action under particular circumstances.
The lecturer questions the idea that species are so perfectly adapted to the climate and environment they inhabit that they cannot be moved to another set of conditions and survive. The main argument is that species are more adaptable than we think, using rats as an example of adaptability to show both plants and animals can survive a change of climate and environment.
It was the philosopher Thomas Nagel, I think, who came up with the thought experiment of trying to imagine what it's like to be a bat. Though I suppose any animal would do. The point is, of course, that you can't, just as you can't know what it's really like to be another person. I mean, know rather than imagine. How much can we know of what goes on in another person's mind? We observe people, watch what they do, listen to what they say, and other sounds they may make, see how they respond to their environment, their likes and dislikes, what they eat, and so on. And from this we have learned to make fairly accurate predictions about how they'll behave in certain situations. Yet we still can't be sure what thoughts have passed through their minds, and certainly not what it feels like to them. We can guess, based on personal experience in similar situations, so we must assume that humans are alike enough for us to be reasonably certain that, for example, we experience the colour red in roughly the same way, or in the same ways. But again, to you, red might bring to mind thoughts of blood and death, whereas to someone else, warmth or excitement. And the differences can't just be cultural.
This is about the problem of consciousness and the possibility or impossibility of knowing for certain how another person thinks or feels. We may, through our own experience and observing others, make rational and sometimes accurate guesses, but we can never really know for sure.
In the present era, what is the largest species of sea-dwelling animal?
Would a tower, a house, or a shop probably be the tallest?
What is the noun form of wide?
The culinary sciences deal with study of what?
What action is this animal doing in the image?